and stationed out of Charleston. I did that for 4 years. I was on a guided missile destroyer for 4 years, and then stayed in the reserves for another 16 with that. And then I got tired of driving to Mayport, Florida. I was with the USS John F. Kennedy down there, the aircraft carrier. And I swapped over to the Air National Guard at the 165th. One of the parents of one of my students he came to school for a conference in his uniform. I was telling him, why don't you come out and see us? And I said, well, I might do that. And so when I went on to the Air Force Base, the 165th was like driving into Mayberry. I was like, because the Navy, here's how it was. I drove on the Air Force Base and people were waving. So they were waving to you, and I'm like, because if you're on the Navy base, they'd be waving, but they'd be waving in a different way. That's how the Navy people were, a bunch of animals. They really are. I mean, they're crazy. You gotta be crazy being on a ship for a long time like that. But anyway, that's what I did. I retired 6 years ago. I picked up my Social Security at 62 because I did the math, and I figured between 62 and 66, I'd get $83,000. And then I figured I did the math too. It'd take me 13 years to make up the difference. And there's no guarantee I'm even gonna get 66 and a half. So I took my money at 62 and I went with that, and I've enjoyed every single day of retirement. I really do, I love it. I mean, I've retired, I recommend it.
How old are you now?
I'm 66.
Okay.
But I took my Social Security at 62, and we live up in a little town called Byron, Georgia, near Warner Robins, and little piece of property there with 3 golden retriever dogs, and my wife, and little 5,000 population there. But we enjoy it up there, and every time I come to Savannah, it's looking more and more like Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, everywhere you look, things are being cut down. Apartments, housing, it's gonna be like the Atlanta metropolitan area, one subdivision after the next. But where I'm at, it's still rural. I got farmland within a mile of my house. We really do like it up there. But that's me. And but anyway, my dad was in the 3rd Infantry Division, World War II. They did the Anzio landing in Italy.
44.
They were on the beach for 140-something days, dug in on the beach. Couldn't get off the beach. They had an artillery duel with the Germans for 142 days, something like that. And he said, after he survived it, that he lived in a hole in the ground. He said he promised himself he would never be cold again. And it was the one thing he came away and said, if I survive this, I'm never going to be cold again. And those guys, they came back and they got busy. Because look at the number of people in these families. Uncle Ulrich Lloyd and Neidlinger had, 13 children? Every time he came back from the railroad. Just like, they got busy and they had all these kids, and not all of them survived, and they all went to work. And my dad said, they, as little kids downtown, they were out on the corner selling newspapers. And my dad told me, he said, that some boys came around and started picking on him and trying to take some of his newspaper money because Ulrich made them give him all the money. And so what happened was those boys found those other boys, and they never had a problem with them because I think, them Neidlingers, they'll kill each other, but you better not let somebody else try to do the same thing. They will look out for each other. They'll fight to the death to protect.
Yeah, don't draw blood on Uncle John.
That's me. That's me and a little bit of my family and a little bit of my history. And, it does matter to pass along, tell people what it used to be like. I remember when Savannah had 2 stations, WTOC, which is Welcome to Our City, WTOC, WJCL, which is Watch J.C. Lewis, WSAV, you had to watch Savannah. And that was it, and on a good night, you could pick up Pembroke, PBS, who wanted to watch that anyway? And then we had an antenna on top of the roof of our house to pick up the stations, and then Dad would send you out in the yard and turn the antenna, and you'd be watching the TV, waiting for it to screen, you know, for it to come in. And then, you know, obviously, as a matter of fact, Eddie Ray, your mom, your dad, they had the first color TV I ever saw. And I went over there one day.
Zena. They wouldn't have nothing but a Zena, it had tubes.
They had two, and I went over there and they had the daytime TV programming on there, and I couldn't believe it. And then she said, "You gotta come over because they're gonna show open heart surgery sometime coming on." So anyway, and then, you know, obviously I spent the night over there one night. We shot the guy's dog with a BB gun. He got mad. And then Eddie sets himself on fire. And said the man watched him burn.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Watched him burn, didn't come over trying to help him. He was rolling around on fire, man.
Where was that?
Reason why.
Oh.
Yeah.
That turned out was the guy putting fuel in the tank for the heater. He looked right at me.
It's like, "Hey, can you give me a hand here?" Anyway, that's it. I mean, that's, you know, I could sit there and tell stories about
Well, this has
coming
been-
up in Thunderbolt. And,
You're on 7.5 minutes so
well,
far.
that's good. But if anybody else has a story I'd like to share, like, you know, whether you've had an injury that you would like to talk about. I will tell you a story real quick, because I've had numerous injuries. And you can tell I like talking to people and being a teacher. But
Neurological
I was.
ones we can tell,
But,
yes.
So anyway, when I was in the reserve, doing a reserve weekend with the Navy, and they didn't have anything for us to do. We were up in Charleston. And so they said, "Why don't y'all go over there and tear up that old banister," or whatever it was. So I had about an E3 rank Navy guy there, but so we were hitting this thing with a hammer, right, tearing it up, and I had a hammer, and I'm hitting the bottom of this 2x4, you know, from a banister, and I hit it, and I hit it again, and I went, and I hit my head, and it almost knocked me out, you know, the bright flashing light. And then I came to, and the guy's looking at me like this. And I looked at him and said, "Not a word." So, anyway, if you have an injury you would like to share, falling off a bike, falling out of a tree, stepping on a nail. I heard him screaming one day in the backyard, and I heard him going, "Ah!" And I looked, and apparently there was a piece of 2x4 out there that had a nail stuck through it, except now the 2x4 was stuck to the bottom of his foot. And I saw him pull that board off of his foot.
I had a thick gum sole shoe on.
Please
It just
feel
stayed
free.
there.
Did you ever hurt yourself? No. Did you ever hurt yourself?
9 minutes, Eric.
How did you hurt yourself?
We don't have enough time.
You never hurt
We don't
yourself.
have enough time to go all over.
Oh my. If anybody would like to share something, please.
There he is.
Go right ahead.
I'm Sherry, and I'm Frank's daughter, and I'm the youngest girl